Everything has a hidden lesson. Buddhist teachings to awaken your consciousness life in its infinite complexity rarely offers us straightforward answers. Often, what appears on the surface as misfortune, pain, or confusion hides a deeper purpose, a subtle lesson waiting to be discovered. The Buddhist tradition, rooted in centuries of observation of the human mind and heart, invites us to look beyond appearances. It teaches us that suffering is not meaningless, that silence is not emptiness, and that every experience, no matter how small or overwhelming, contains the seeds of awakening. When we open ourselves to the possibility that everything we live through, joy, sorrow, loss, gain, triumph, and failure, is part of a larger design, we begin to understand that there is no wasted moment. Nothing is accidental in the unfolding of life. Every event becomes a mirror in which we can observe ourselves more clearly. Every relationship becomes a teacher, every obstacle a path, every fall a push toward greater consciousness. Buddhism emphasizes impermanence, compassion, and mindfulness, but at its core lies an invitation to awaken to the truth that reality is constantly speaking to us. To live awake means to recognize that nothing is random, that everything has a hidden lesson, and that these lessons are often veiled behind the illusions of desire, fear, and attachment. By removing these veils, we discover that life itself is our greatest teacher, always guiding us toward wisdom, balance, and liberation. In the following chapters, we will journey together through 5 vast reflections. Each one explores how hidden lessons are woven into the fabric of our lives and how Buddhist teachings help us uncover them. Through stories, contemplations, and profound insights, we will learn to perceive the meaning behind our experiences and to walk the path of awakening with greater clarity. The hidden lessons in suffering. Suffering is often seen as an enemy, an unwelcome intruder in our lives. From the moment we are children, we are taught to avoid pain, to seek pleasure, and to run from anything that reminds us of fragility or imperfection. Yet Buddhism begins precisely by acknowledging suffering, dukkha, as the fundamental truth of existence. This recognition is not pessimism, but honesty. Only when we stop denying suffering can we begin to perceive the wisdom it carries. Every wound carries a message. Every tear contains a seed. When we suffer, we are being invited to pause, to listen more deeply, and to look beneath the surface of life. Pain exposes what is hidden, it tears down illusions, and it forces us to confront what we would rather avoid. Far from being meaningless, suffering is often the gateway to transformation. Imagine a lotus flower. It blooms with breathtaking beauty, but its roots are buried in the mud. Without mud, there is no lotus. The same is true of the human spirit. Without difficulties, losses, and heartbreaks, there would be no growth, no depth, no true compassion. Our challenges, no matter how heavy, shape us into who we are. They strip us of arrogance, soften our hearts, and awaken our capacity to connect with others who also suffer. Buddhist teachings invite us to see suffering not as punishment, but as a teacher. Illness may teach us the value of health and the fragility of the body. Betrayal may teach us the importance of trust, self-respect, and discernment. Failure may teach us humility, perseverance, and the art of beginning again. Loss may teach us about impermanence, helping us to appreciate the fleeting beauty of every moment. But how do we uncover the hidden lesson when suffering is overwhelming? The first step is acceptance. To resist pain is to double it. To accept it is to soften it, to allow it to speak. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It means recognizing reality as it is, without denial. From this recognition arises the possibility of learning. The second step is observation. Through mindfulness, we can observe the movements of the mind during suffering. We see our fears, our attachments, our illusions. We realize that much of our pain comes not from the event itself, but from our interpretation of it. The mind clings to what should have been and suffers because it refuses to accept what is. By observing these movements, we begin to loosen their grip. The third step is compassion. Compassion toward ourselves for the human condition we inhabit, and compassion toward others who are also navigating invisible battles. Suffering awakens tenderness. It reminds us that we are not alone, that all beings share this fragile path of existence. Compassion transforms suffering into connection, and connection transforms suffering into meaning. The fourth step is transcendence. Once we have accepted, observed, and cultivated compassion, suffering reveals its gift, transformation. We emerge from it wiser, more grounded, and more capable of facing life with serenity. The wound becomes scar, and the scar becomes reminder. And in that reminder, we carry not bitterness, but strength. Consider the life of the Buddha himself. Before his awakening, Siddhartha Gautama was sheltered in a palace, protected from all forms of suffering. But once he stepped outside and encountered sickness, old age, and death, his life changed forever. Those painful encounters became the very catalysts of his search for truth. Without suffering, there would have been no Buddha. His story is not just his, it is ours. Every time we suffer, life is whispering, "Awaken." Behind every pain, there is a hidden lesson. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is detachment. Sometimes it is the discovery of strength we did not know we had. But always, suffering holds meaning when we choose to listen. This is the invitation of Buddhist wisdom, to transform our relationship with suffering, to see it as a teacher rather than an enemy, to allow it to awaken consciousness rather than close the heart. When we embrace this perspective, no suffering is wasted. Every challenge becomes part of our awakening. If you want to continue exploring these profound lessons and discover how to awaken your consciousness through the wisdom of Buddhism, make sure to subscribe to this channel. By doing so, you will walk with us on this journey of growth, reflection, and inner peace. The hidden lessons in impermanence. Impermanence is perhaps the most profound and misunderstood of all Buddhist teachings. To most people, the idea that everything changes can feel threatening. We long for stability, permanence, certainty, and control. We want our relationships to last forever, our youth to remain untouched, our successes to stay secure, our loved ones to remain close, and our world to remain predictable. And yet, reality constantly dismantles these illusions. The truth is that nothing lasts. All forms, all experiences, all states of being are in constant flux. The seasons change, the body ages, relationships evolve, circumstances shift, and even the mountains erode with time. Impermanence is not an exception, but the very nature of existence. The Buddha pointed to impermanence as one of the three marks of existence, along with suffering and non-self. To deny impermanence is to live in illusion, to cling desperately to what cannot be held. But when we accept impermanence, when we embrace it deeply, we begin to awaken to a freedom that cannot be shaken by the winds of change. The hidden lesson of impermanence is that it is not an enemy, but a teacher. It teaches us to value each moment, to let go of attachment, and to awaken to the present as the only reality we truly have. To contemplate impermanence is to confront the fragility of life. We may resist this confrontation, but it comes to us whether we welcome it or not. The passing of a loved one, the end of a relationship, the loss of a job, or even the quiet realization that we are aging, these moments force us to acknowledge impermanence. They strip us of illusions and awaken us to the truth that everything we love is temporary. This truth can cause despair if we resist it, but it can also open the door to deep wisdom if we allow it to enter our hearts. Consider the fleeting nature of a sunset. Its beauty captivates us precisely because it is brief. If it were permanent, if the sky remained eternally painted in gold and crimson, would we still marvel at it? Or would it become ordinary, unnoticed, taken for granted? Impermanence, far from diminishing beauty, intensifies it. It teaches us that every encounter, every breath, every gesture of kindness, every fleeting joy is precious because it will not last. To live with this awareness is to live fully awake, not postponing gratitude, not delaying love, not wasting moments in distraction, but savoring life as it unfolds. Yet impermanence also challenges us. It asks us to release our attachments, and this is perhaps the hardest lesson of all. Attachment arises from the illusion of permanence, the belief that we can hold on to things, people, and experiences. We cling to youth, to possessions, to relationships, to identities, believing that if we hold tightly enough, we can prevent them from slipping away. But the tighter we cling, the more we suffer when impermanence reveals itself. Buddhism teaches that the root of suffering is this very clinging, this refusal to accept the reality of change. To learn the hidden lesson of impermanence, we must shift our relationship with change. Instead of fearing it, we can begin to embrace it as the natural rhythm of life. Just as the seasons turn, just as day follows night, just as the river flows without ever being the same, so too does our life move in cycles of beginnings and endings. Each ending carries within it the seed of a new beginning. The leaves fall so that new buds can grow. The night descends so that dawn can return. When we resist endings, we miss the possibility of renewal. But when we accept them, we begin to flow with life rather than against it. Impermanence is not only about loss, it is also about possibility. Because nothing lasts, nothing is fixed. Our suffering too is impermanent. Our mistakes, our failures, our moments of despair, all of these pass. No storm lasts forever, and no winter holds the earth in its grip without yielding to spring. To recognize this is to awaken to hope, to resilience, to the capacity to endure even the darkest nights with the certainty that dawn will come. Impermanence is both the source of sorrow and the promise of renewal. In meditation practice, impermanence becomes vivid. As we sit and observe the body, we notice the rise and fall of the breath, the pulsing of the heart, the subtle shifts of sensation. As we watch the mind, we see thoughts arise and dissolve, emotions swell and fade, images appear and vanish. Nothing holds, nothing remains. To witness this directly is to begin to see through the illusion of solidity. We realize that clinging to thoughts, feelings, or states of being is futile because they are always in motion. We learn to rest in awareness itself, the silent witness that is not bound by impermanence, but which allows impermanence to flow through. Impermanence also teaches us humility. We are reminded that we are not the masters of time, not the controllers of life. No matter how much wealth, power, or influence we accumulate, impermanence humbles us. The greatest empires have fallen, the most celebrated figures have passed, the most secure structures have crumbled. To live with this awareness is to cultivate humility, to recognize the limits of control, and to find peace not in resistance, but in surrender. But there is also a profound joy in impermanence, joy in knowing that life is not stagnant, that growth is always possible, that change opens doors we cannot yet imagine. Impermanence liberates us from despair by reminding us that nothing is final. Even in the face of death, impermanence teaches us that life itself is a cycle, that endings are transformations, that energy continues to flow, that nothing truly disappears but simply changes form. To hold this perspective is to live with less fear and more openness. The hidden lesson of impermanence is gratitude. Gratitude for the people who walk beside us, knowing that they will not always be there. Gratitude for the body that carries us, knowing that it will one day fail. Gratitude for the opportunities we encounter, knowing that they may never come again. Gratitude for this very breath, this moment, this heartbeat, because each is fragile, fleeting, unrepeatable. Gratitude awakens when we recognize impermanence, and gratitude transforms our lives into a practice of constant reverence. In practical terms, living with awareness of impermanence means choosing presence over distraction. It means saying, "I love you," when we feel it instead of waiting for tomorrow. It means appreciating the laughter of a friend, the warmth of the sun, the fragrance of a flower, the silence of dawn. It means forgiving more quickly, releasing grudges more easily, and remembering that time is precious. Impermanence invites us to live deeply, not superficially, to live now, not someday. When the Buddha taught impermanence, he did not do so to inspire despair, but to awaken liberation. He knew that once we accept that all things change, we are freed from the chains of attachment and fear. We begin to see that our true refuge is not in things that pass, but in the awareness that perceives them. Awareness itself is like the sky, vast, open, unchanging, while the clouds of impermanence drift across it. When we rest in awareness, we are no longer enslaved by the coming and going of experiences. We are free. This freedom does not make us indifferent but more alive. Knowing that our loved ones are impermanent makes us cherish them more. Knowing that opportunities are impermanent makes us seize them more boldly. Knowing that our own life is impermanent makes us use our days wisely, with compassion and purpose. Impermanence, when embraced, transforms fear into vitality, sorrow into gratitude, endings into beginnings. Thus, impermanence is not a curse, but a blessing. It is the rhythm of life, the pulse of the universe, the hidden lesson that awakens consciousness. To deny it is to live in illusion. To embrace it is to live in truth. And in truth, there is freedom, peace, and awakening. As you reflect on these teachings, let them remind you that life is too precious to postpone. If this wisdom resonates with you, and you wish to continue walking the path of awakening through Buddhist teachings, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. By doing so, you become part of a community dedicated to exploring the hidden lessons of existence and to living each moment with awareness, gratitude, and clarity. The hidden lessons. In desire is one of the most powerful forces in human life. It drives us, shapes our decisions, and influences the way we perceive the world. From the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we fall asleep at night, desire is present in countless forms. The desire for food, for comfort, for recognition, for security, for love, for success, for pleasure, for escape. It is so woven into our daily existence that we rarely stop to question its nature. Buddhism, however, invites us to pause and look closely at desire, not to condemn it blindly, nor to indulge it without restraint, but to understand its hidden lessons. At the heart of the Buddha's teaching lies the recognition that desire, or craving, is one of the primary causes of suffering. The second noble truth states that suffering arises from craving, from our thirst for things to be different than they are, from our clinging to pleasure, existence, or non-existence. This does not mean that desire is inherently evil, but that when unexamined, it binds us to cycles of dissatisfaction. When we look beneath the surface of desire, we discover that it contains profound lessons about the nature of the mind, the illusions that drive us, and the path toward freedom. The first hidden lesson of desire is that it reveals the restlessness of the human heart. We are rarely satisfied for long. When one desire is fulfilled, another arises almost immediately. We long for a new possession, achieve it, and soon find ourselves longing for the next. We crave recognition, receive praise, and then feel anxious when it fades. We pursue pleasure, enjoy it briefly, and then feel the emptiness of its absence. This endless cycle of wanting and grasping reveals that desire is not simply about objects or goals. It is about the fundamental nature of craving itself. The mind, when untrained, is like a fire that never ceases to burn, always consuming, never content. This lesson teaches us that true satisfaction cannot be found in chasing external desires, but only in transforming the nature of our relationship to desire. The second lesson is that desire exposes our illusions. Often we believe that if we achieve a certain goal or acquire a certain thing, then we will finally be complete, happy, at peace. Desire whispers promises of fulfillment. Once you have this, you will be whole. Yet every time we reach what we long for, the satisfaction is temporary. The object of desire never fully delivers on its promise because the root of dissatisfaction lies not outside of us, but within the mind itself. This realization can be disheartening at first, but it is also liberating. It means that we do not need to spend our lives endlessly chasing after illusions. We can turn inward, cultivate awareness, and discover the peace that is independent of conditions. The third lesson of desire is that it teaches us about attachment. Desire clings. It says, "This is mine," or "I must have this," or "I cannot live without that." When we are attached, our identity becomes entangled with what we desire. We begin to measure our worth by our possessions, our achievements, or our relationships. This clinging creates fear. The fear of loss, the fear of failure, the fear of not being enough. In this way, desire imprisons us. And yet, by observing this attachment with mindfulness, we begin to see its impermanent and empty nature. We see that no possession, no experience, no relationship can define who we truly are. We learn to loosen our grip, to let things come and go without being enslaved by them. In this letting go, we find a taste of freedom. Desire also teaches us about suffering through its insatiable nature. If we reflect carefully, we can see that desire itself often creates more suffering than the absence of what we desire. For example, when we long intensely for something, the mind is restless, unsatisfied, often tormented by fantasies and fears. If the desire is fulfilled, the satisfaction is short-lived. If it is not fulfilled, frustration and disappointment arise. Either way, desire generates unease. The lesson hidden within this dynamic is profound. Peace does not come from fulfilling every desire, but from understanding desire itself. By observing desire without automatically obeying it, we begin to loosen its power. We see it arise, we recognize it, and we let it pass. This simple practice reveals that we are not the slaves of desire, but the witnesses of its movements. Another hidden lesson of desire is that it reflects our longing for something deeper than objects or experiences. Beneath every desire, if we look closely, lies a yearning for connection, meaning and wholeness. The desire for wealth may conceal a longing for security. The desire for recognition may conceal a longing for love and acceptance. The desire for pleasure may conceal a longing for relief from suffering. Ultimately, all desires can be seen as distorted reflections of a more fundamental longing, the longing for awakening, for liberation, for union with truth. When we recognize this, desire becomes not an enemy, but a guide. It points us toward what we truly seek, even if we pursue it in misguided ways. By tracing desire back to its root, we discover that what we truly long for is freedom from longing itself. Buddhism does not ask us to extinguish all desire indiscriminately. It distinguishes between unwholesome craving, which binds us to suffering, and wholesome aspiration, which leads us toward awakening. The aspiration to cultivate compassion, to practice mindfulness, to walk the path of liberation. These are forms of desire that uplift rather than enslave. The hidden lesson here is discernment. Learning to recognize which desires lead to bondage and which lead to freedom. This discernment requires mindfulness, honesty, and wisdom. In meditation, desire becomes visible in its raw form. As we sit in silence, countless desires arise in the mind. The desire for comfort, the desire for distraction, the desire for progress, the desire for the meditation to end. By observing these desires without acting on them, we learn something essential. Desire is not who we are. It is simply a passing movement of the mind, like a cloud drifting through the sky. We begin to see that we can experience desire without being consumed by it. This is the beginning of liberation. There is also a lesson in the impermanence of desire itself. No desire lasts forever. They come like waves, they rise with intensity, and then they fade. Sometimes they fade because they are fulfilled, sometimes because the mind moves on, sometimes because circumstances change. By observing the impermanence of desire, we learn patience. We see that we do not need to rush to satisfy every craving, because in time it will dissolve on its own. This recognition gives us strength, resilience, and freedom. On a deeper level, desire also teaches us about emptiness. When we look closely at the object of desire, we see that it has no inherent power to satisfy us. Its power comes only from the meaning we project onto it. For example, a simple object may seem insignificant until we attach to it the belief that it will make us happy, but the object itself is empty of that inherent meaning. This insight reveals that the power of desire lies not in the world, but in the mind. To see this clearly is to loosen the grip of illusion and to awaken to the freedom that nothing outside of us can truly bind us. The hidden lessons of desire extend even to love. Love, when distorted by craving and attachment, becomes possessive, controlling, and fearful. But love, when freed from desire, becomes compassion, generosity, and freedom. Desire teaches us this contrast. It shows us how clinging to another person creates suffering, while allowing them to be free creates joy. This is perhaps one of the hardest but most beautiful lessons of desire: to love without clinging, to care without controlling, to give without demanding. The Buddha's own journey illustrates the hidden lessons of desire. Before his awakening, he pursued desire in both extremes. As a prince, he lived a life of indulgence, surrounded by luxury, pleasure, and comfort. Later, as an ascetic, he pursued the desire for liberation through severe deprivation and self-denial. In both paths, he discovered the futility of extremes. It was only when he embraced the middle way, neither indulging desire nor repressing it harshly, that he found the path to awakening. His life teaches us that the lesson of desire is balance, to neither be enslaved by it, nor to reject it blindly, but to understand it deeply, and to use that understanding as a stepping stone toward freedom. In everyday life, the hidden lessons of desire can transform the way we live. When we notice a craving arise, whether for food, recognition, or success, we can pause and ask, what is the deeper longing behind this desire? Is it pointing me toward something wholesome, or something that will cause more suffering? Can I allow this desire to pass without grasping it? Can I redirect this energy toward compassion, mindfulness, or growth? Each desire becomes an opportunity to practice awareness, to cultivate discernment, and to walk the path of awakening. Ultimately, the greatest hidden lesson of desire is that true peace and fulfillment cannot be found in satisfying desire, but in transcending it. When the fire of craving cools, when the restless pursuit of more quiets, we discover a joy that is not dependent on conditions. This joy is the joy of being, of awareness itself, of the freedom that comes when the heart is no longer enslaved by endless wanting. This is nirvana, the extinguishing of the fire, the awakening to a peace that is unshakable. And yet, this lesson does not mean that we must live cold or detached lives. On the contrary, it means that we live more fully, more freely, more compassionately. Freed from the chains of craving, we can enjoy life without clinging, love without fear, act without selfishness, and rest without anxiety. This is the hidden gift of desire. When we see through its illusions, it no longer binds us, but guides us toward the truth of freedom. As you reflect on these lessons, remember that the journey is gradual. We are all learning, all navigating the complex terrain of desire and craving. Each moment of awareness is a step toward liberation. Each act of letting go is a taste of freedom. Each recognition of the impermanence and emptiness of desire is a glimpse of awakening. If you wish to continue walking this path of insight and awakening, and if you feel called to deepen your understanding of life's hidden lessons through Buddhist wisdom, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Together, we can continue to explore, reflect, and grow, uncovering the truths that free the heart and awaken the mind. The hidden lessons in relationships. Relationships are perhaps the most challenging and illuminating arenas of human life. They are the crucibles in which we learn about love, attachment, compassion, anger, forgiveness, and the very structure of the self. Buddhism teaches that life itself is interdependent, that no being exists in isolation, and it is in our interactions with others that this truth becomes most evident. From the moment we are born, we are woven into a web of relationships with our parents, our friends, our partners, our communities, and ultimately with all sentient beings. Relationships can bring us immense joy, comfort, and growth, but they can also bring us conflict, disappointment, and pain. To navigate relationships consciously is to uncover hidden lessons that awaken our understanding of ourselves and of life itself. One of the first lessons relationships reveal is the truth of impermanence. No relationship, no matter how deep, remains exactly the same. People change, circumstances shift, and the dynamics of relationships evolve. To cling to the illusion that a relationship will always remain as it was is to set ourselves up for suffering. Romantic relationships, friendships, family bonds, all of these move through cycles of closeness and distance, harmony and discord, beginnings and endings. By embracing impermanence in relationships, we learn to appreciate each moment of connection as precious rather than taking it for granted or clinging to it desperately. We learn to love fully while also letting go when the time comes, without bitterness, but with gratitude. Another hidden lesson in relationships is the mirror they hold up to our own minds. Often, what we admire or dislike in others reflects something within ourselves. The compassion we see in another may awaken our own capacity for kindness. The irritation we feel toward another may reveal our own impatience or unresolved wounds. Relationships are like mirrors that show us the parts of ourselves we might otherwise ignore. This is why relationships can be so challenging. They confront us with truths we would rather avoid. But if we have the courage to look into these mirrors with honesty, relationships become opportunities for profound self-discovery and growth. Relationships also teach us about attachment and clinging. When we love someone, we often want to hold on tightly, to possess, to control, to ensure that they will always remain close. This clinging, however, often leads to suffering, both for ourselves and for the other. True love, as Buddhism teaches, is not about possession, but about freedom. To love someone is to wish for their happiness, even if it does not align with our own desires. The hidden lesson is that love is not diminished by letting go. In fact, it becomes purer, freer, and more compassionate when freed from the chains of attachment. To love without clinging is to love with open hands and an open heart, allowing the other to be who they truly are. Conflict in relationships offers another profound lesson. When disagreements arise, our first instinct is often to defend ourselves, to prove we are right, to blame the other. Yet Buddhism invites us to see conflict as an opportunity to practice mindfulness, patience, and compassion. Conflict reveals our triggers, our ego, our need for control. If we approach conflict with awareness, it becomes a teacher that shows us where we still have work to do. Instead of reacting with anger, we can learn to respond with understanding. Instead of holding grudges, we can learn the practice of forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about condoning harm, but about freeing ourselves from the poison of resentment. Every conflict, when approached with wisdom, becomes a doorway to greater understanding and deeper connection. Relationships also teach us about the illusion of self. We often think of ourselves as separate, independent individuals, but relationships reveal how deeply interconnected we truly are. Our moods, our actions, our words affect others in ways we may not realize. Similarly, the presence and actions of others shape us constantly. This interdependence is at the heart of Buddhist teaching. To see it clearly is to recognize that harming another is ultimately harming ourselves, and that cultivating compassion for others is inseparable from cultivating peace within. The hidden lesson here is that our well-being and the well-being of others are not separate, but intimately bound together. The joys of relationships also carry lessons. When we experience deep connection, kindness, or love from another, we glimpse the beauty of human interdependence. These moments remind us of the innate goodness that exists in people, even amid the struggles and flaws. They awaken gratitude and inspire us to cultivate those same qualities in ourselves. Joy in relationships teaches us to celebrate the simple gifts of companionship, laughter, and support, and to recognize them as expressions of the universal desire for connection. Relationships with those who challenge us, however, often carry the deepest lessons. It is easy to be kind to those who are kind to us, but what about those who irritate, frustrate, or even harm us? These relationships reveal the limits of our compassion and invite us to expand it. The difficult person becomes a teacher, showing us where we are still attached to pride, anger, or judgment. This does not mean we must tolerate harm or remain in unhealthy situations, but even in setting boundaries, we can learn to act with wisdom and compassion rather than hatred. To transform resentment into understanding, even if from a distance, is one of the most profound lessons relationships can offer. Family relationships in particular often reveal the strongest attachments and the most deeply ingrained patterns. The expectations, roles, and histories we carry from our families can shape us in powerful ways. These relationships may bring love and support, but also pain and conflict. To navigate them mindfully is to uncover lessons about forgiveness, letting go of expectations, and seeing our parents, siblings, and children not as perfect beings but as humans also struggling with their own suffering and illusions. Recognizing the humanity of our family members, with all their flaws and limitations, helps us cultivate compassion and release unrealistic expectations. Romantic relationships, too, are filled with hidden lessons. They often awaken intense emotions, passion, joy, jealousy, fear, longing. These emotions, when observed mindfully, become windows into the nature of desire and attachment. Romantic love can easily become entangled with craving, leading to suffering when it is lost or unfulfilled. But it can also become a path of practice, teaching us to love selflessly, to communicate with honesty, to let go of illusions about perfection, and to honor the impermanence of intimacy. When approached with awareness, romantic relationships can be profound teachers of patience, compassion, and the art of letting go. Friendships, though often less dramatic than romantic relationships, carry their own lessons. They remind us of the importance of connection, trust, and loyalty. They show us the beauty of companionship without the intensity of romantic attachment. Friendships teach us the value of presence, simply being with another person in joy or in silence. They also teach us about change, as friendships sometimes grow stronger, sometimes drift apart. By appreciating friendships without clinging, we learn to honor the ebb and flow of human connection. Even brief encounters carry lessons. A stranger's smile, a moment of kindness from someone we will never see again, or even an act of cruelty from an unknown person can awaken reflection. These moments remind us that every interaction has meaning, that every being we encounter is part of our journey, and that the way we respond matters. To treat each person with respect, even in fleeting encounters, is to recognize the shared humanity that binds us all. The ultimate hidden lesson in relationships is compassion. Relationships reveal that everyone we meet carries suffering, just as we do. Behind every harsh word may be hidden pain. Behind every act of selfishness may be hidden fear. Behind every act of love may be hidden the universal longing for connection. To see others with this understanding is to open the heart to compassion. Compassion transforms relationships from arenas of conflict into opportunities for healing. It allows us to forgive, to release resentment, to support and to connect at a deeper level. Relationships, then, are not merely sources of pleasure or pain, but sacred teachers. They reveal our illusions, challenge our ego, awaken our compassion, and remind us of our interdependence. When we approach relationships with mindfulness, they become part of our spiritual path. Every conversation, every conflict, every gesture of kindness becomes an opportunity to awaken. The Buddha emphasized the importance of community, or sangha, in the path of awakening. We do not walk this path alone, but with others who support and challenge us. Relationships are part of this path, reminding us that awakening is not just an individual pursuit, but a collective journey. To cultivate harmonious, compassionate, and mindful relationships is to contribute to the awakening of all beings. In the end, the hidden lessons in relationships point us back to the deepest truth, that love, when freed from attachment, becomes boundless compassion. That connection, when freed from illusion, becomes a path of awakening. That even conflict, when approached with wisdom, becomes a teacher. Relationships are not obstacles to spiritual practice, but the very field in which practice unfolds. They are the mirrors in which we see ourselves most clearly, the teachers that challenge us most deeply, and the blessings that remind us of the beauty of interdependence. As you reflect on your own relationships, consider what lessons they may be teaching you. Are they revealing attachments that need to be released? Are they showing you places where compassion can grow? Are they reminding you of the impermanence of life and the preciousness of connection? Each relationship, whether joyful or painful, carries a hidden lesson waiting to be discovered. If these reflections resonate with you and you wish to continue exploring the profound wisdom hidden in every aspect of life through Buddhist teachings, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. By joining us, you will continue walking a path of awareness, compassion, and awakening, guided by the lessons that life itself continually offers. The hidden lessons in silence. Silence is often misunderstood in the modern world. To many, silence is seen as emptiness, absence, or even discomfort. We fill our days with noise, conversation, distraction, and endless streams of information because we are often afraid of what silence might reveal. Yet within Buddhist teachings, silence is not emptiness, but fullness, not absence, but presence, not void, but depth. Silence holds lessons that words cannot convey, and to enter deeply into silence is to open ourselves to truths that are hidden beneath the surface of ordinary life. When we first sit in silence, especially in meditation, what often arises is not peace, but restlessness. The mind begins to chatter even louder, filling the space with thoughts, worries, memories, and plans. We quickly realize that silence is not the absence of sound, but the absence of external distraction that exposes the internal noise we constantly carry. This is the first hidden lesson of silence. It reveals the true state of our minds. By sitting quietly, we see the endless stream of thoughts that normally go unnoticed amid the noise of daily life. We see how restless, anxious, or distracted we are. Silence, therefore, is like a mirror, showing us the inner landscape we often avoid. This revelation, though uncomfortable at first, is the beginning of wisdom, for we cannot transform what we cannot see. As we remain in silence longer, another lesson begins to emerge. We see that thoughts, like clouds, arise and pass away. The mind may bring up memories, fantasies, worries, or judgments, but in silence we learn that we do not need to follow them. We can simply observe. In this observation, we discover that we are not the thoughts themselves, but the awareness that witnesses them. This is a profound realization. It means that beneath the noise of the mind, there is a deeper stillness that is always present. Silence, when embraced, leads us to this stillness. It reveals that our true nature is not the restless chatter of the mind, but the spacious awareness in which all thoughts arise and dissolve. Silence also teaches us about impermanence. Just as sounds arise and fade, so too do thoughts and emotions. In silence, we can watch them more clearly. Anxieties that seemed overwhelming begin to lose their grip when we observe them without feeding them. Anger that once burned intensely fades into nothing when we do not react to it. Joy that arises spontaneously is savored more fully when we are present with it in silence. Every mental and emotional state is impermanent, and silence allows us to witness this truth directly. This recognition loosens our attachment to mental states and brings greater peace. Another hidden lesson of silence is humility. In silence, the ego loses its usual ground. Much of our identity is constructed through words, through the stories we tell ourselves and others. When we stop speaking, when we enter true silence, these stories begin to dissolve. We realize that we are not as solid as we believed, that our sense of self is more fluid and fragile. Silence humbles us by stripping away the layers of identity built on words and concepts. What remains is a simple presence, beyond roles, beyond labels, beyond self-image. This humility is not a loss, but a liberation. It allows us to experience ourselves and others more authentically, without the masks of constant speech and performance. Silence also deepens our capacity for listening. Most of the time, when we engage in conversation, we listen not to understand, but to respond. Our minds are busy preparing replies, judgments, or stories of our own. But when we cultivate silence within ourselves, we begin to listen differently. We listen with openness, with attention, with presence. We hear not only the words of others, but also the emotions, the pauses, the silences between words. We hear what is unspoken, what lies beneath. This kind of listening is an act of compassion, a way of being fully present with another person. The hidden lesson here is that silence is not just about not speaking. It is about listening more deeply to life itself. Nature often teaches us this lesson effortlessly. When we walk in a forest, sit by a river, or watch the stars in the night sky, the silence of nature envelops us. This silence is not empty but alive. It carries the sounds of wind, water, and birds, yet it is free of the noise of human restlessness. In such silence, we feel a deep sense of belonging, a reminder that we are part of a larger whole. The silence of nature awakens awe and gratitude, teaching us that silence connects us to the sacred dimension of existence. Silence also teaches us about compassion for ourselves. In silence, we are confronted with our own suffering, our own wounds, our own fears. At first, this confrontation can feel overwhelming. We may feel the urge to escape back into distraction. But if we remain, if we breathe and allow ourselves to be present, silence becomes a space of healing. It allows emotions to surface, to be felt fully, and to dissolve. In silence, we learn to be with ourselves without judgment, to hold our own pain with gentleness. This self-compassion is the foundation for compassion toward others. Without learning to sit in silence with our own suffering, it is difficult to be fully present with the suffering of others. Another profound lesson of silence is its relationship with truth. Words can distort, exaggerate, or conceal. Silence, on the other hand, is honest. In silence, we can no longer escape reality with endless talk. We are confronted with what is real, with what is. This is why silence has been central in Buddhist practice for centuries. Monks and practitioners enter periods of silence, not as punishment, but as a way of aligning with truth. In silence, delusions dissolve and clarity arises. We begin to see life as it truly is, beyond the veils of language and concept. Silence is also a gateway to transcendence. When the mind quiets and the chatter fades, we glimpse a dimension of being that is vast and timeless. In this stillness, there is no separation, no division, no self and other. There is only presence, awareness, being. This is the silence of awakening, the silence that points beyond words to the ultimate truth. The hidden lesson here is that silence is not the absence of communication, but the deepest communication with reality itself. In daily life, practicing silence can transform our experience. Taking moments each day to pause, to breathe, to sit quietly without distraction helps us reconnect with ourselves. It helps us respond to life with greater clarity rather than reacting impulsively. Silence before speaking allows us to choose words more wisely. Silence amid conflict allows us to respond with compassion rather than anger. Silence in the face of beauty allows us to savor it more deeply. By cultivating silence, we learn to live with greater mindfulness, patience, and wisdom. Silence also reminds us that not everything needs to be said, that wisdom often lies in restraint. Sometimes the most compassionate response is silence, listening without judgment. Sometimes the most powerful teaching is given not in words, but in presence. The Buddha himself often remained silent when asked certain questions, not because he had nothing to say, but because silence was the truest answer. Silence teaches us discernment, when to speak and when to remain still, when words are needed and when they would only add confusion. Ultimately, the hidden lessons of silence point us back to the essence of Buddhist practice: awareness, compassion, and liberation. Silence teaches us to see the mind clearly, to let go of illusions, to listen deeply, to cultivate compassion, and to rest in the stillness of awareness itself. It reveals that beneath the noise of life, there is a profound peace that is always present, waiting to be discovered. To walk the path of awakening is to embrace silence not as emptiness but as fullness, not as absence but as presence. In silence we discover ourselves, we discover others, and we discover the truth that words can only point toward. Silence is not the end of communication, but the beginning of deeper understanding. It is the ground on which awakening flourishes. As you continue your journey, remember that silence is always available to you. No matter how noisy the world becomes, you can always return to the stillness within. You can always listen more deeply, breathe more fully, and rest in the quiet presence of awareness. This is the gift of silence, the teacher that never speaks but always guides. If you wish to continue exploring these profound truths and learning how Buddhist wisdom can awaken your consciousness through the hidden lessons of life, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. By joining us, you will walk together with a community dedicated to reflection, mindfulness, and the pursuit of awakening, guided by the silence that speaks beyond words.